Petroleum is huge in the skincare industry. Sounds crazy, right? So true though. What I want to do today is talk to you about why petroleum's in skincare, where it is, how to find it, why it's there, why it might be good, why it might be bad. Just a really balanced view of it so you can make your own decisions. The words you are looking for on an ingredient list, an INCI list for petroleum will either be petroleum, paraffin liquid or paraffin liquidum would be the other option. Number 3, it might appear on there as mineral oil. And number 4, it might also appear on there as liquid paraffin, and you might also get petroleum jelly. So those are kind of the 5 keywords, the most obvious ways that you can see whether a petroleum paraffin derivative is in your beauty products. Now in other episodes, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about where else you're going to find that paraffin, not in its most obvious form like those 5 names, but for today, let's stick with those really, really obvious ones. Petroleum is all over your beauty products. I want you to go tonight, go wash your face, get a bottle and have a look for some of those names. It really, really divides the beauty industry as to whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Pink's Boutique and myself are about nothing but the truth, so we're going to look at both sides. It totally polarizes. You will get people where they're like, my grandma only ever used Vaseline pure petroleum jelly all over her face for 93 years and she died without a wrinkle on her face. And then you'll get the other side that are like, why would I put a petroleum derivative coming out of the petrol industry into my skincare and then it potentially absorb into my body? Surely that's not a great idea. I want you to be able to choose. I want you to be able to know. So what I'm going to do is, opposed to just put another video out there where it's saying petroleum is bad, which to be honest is what most of my industry, the green organic industry, does, I want to tell you why it's there and why it potentially shouldn't be there, and then it can be your call. I've told you the 5 names that we're looking out for. Now which bottles? In honesty, pretty much take any bottle, you're going to find some in the beauty industry. Anything that is creamy, so cleansers, moisturizers, makeup, concealers, foundation, any fake synthetic fragrancing, it's always in there. There's going to be loads of it. It is huge in the skincare industry. Why then? Okay, so let's go for the why side and try and be positive. Why would you use it? 1, history. There is no getting away from it. This is a historical ingredient. Luke and I recently were speaking to one of the chief ex-Boots formulators and he was talking about E45. That is a paraffin liquid based cream and he was saying it was formulated I think in 1946 and hasn't changed a jot since. There is undoubtedly some history in this. It was one of the first ingredients that would have been used as part of an emulsion. An emulsion is when you mix oil and water together and get cream. So that's lots of beauty products. So 1 is a historical aspect. Secondly is price. If you need cream, you need water, not that expensive, oil, can be incredibly cheap and horrendously expensive. And paraffin liquid or petroleum is the cheapest way to get an oil to mix with that water. So when you need cream, if you want to make lots of money when you sell your bottle, the most sensible way to do that, just based on money, would be water and paraffin liquid mixed together. And so it is undoubtedly there because it is cheap as chips. Kind of a pro if you're the person making it, not so much definitely if you're the person using it. So good for somebody's margin somewhere is your cheap price. Sticking on the positives, another reason that it would have historically and still long-term used now is because it's inert. Inert as in nothing very much, which is hugely positive if you don't want a reaction from skin. So if you are selling thousands and thousands of bottles and you want to minimize any risk of reaction, then it is a good thing. If it doesn't do very much though, not so great for your skin. So that's the kind of flip side of the inert nature. But it's why that inertness is why you'll find it in things like E45 and any sort of aqueous creams that doctors prescribe, or any sort of like thick white emollients that will be put on sensitive skin. Inert. In my world that means dead skincare, but you can arguably see why that might be needed in some places, that inert nature. And that leads us to its other function, And the reason it would have been chosen and used originally is because it is a barrier. It will literally barrier and sit on the top of the skin. And there may be some skin conditions that might be useful for. So for instance, that's why it's always used in eczema, aqueous creams, because the idea is it sits on the skin, sits as a barrier, doesn't let any water out of the skin, to help maintain some sort of moisture in the skin. People always ask me why it's used, and those reasons really are why it exists. There is clearly a flip side to that though, and that's what we need to have a look at next. Let's go negatives then. Leading that barrier one straight into the other side of that. You can argue why that is a positive, but it's what you call an occlusive. That means a barrier. So it literally will sit and wrap the top of your skin. Fundamentally, think of it like wrapping cling film, like a plastic around your skin, and that's what you have. Now, if you have acne, blackheads, pimples, that is not a good idea at all. And ironically, it is what most acne-based products are based in. So when you're buying very distinct, like teenage-focused, skin-stripping acne products, it is there in bounds. Yet it actually in part causes the problem of clogging skin. So there is a genuine issue with being a barrier. The other thing is there are some other barriers, like the natural world has some beautiful barriers like shea butter or mango butter. They're just more expensive, so people might not necessarily choose to use them in a formulation compared to that old cheap as chips petrol one. So that's why it's there. So occlusion, barrier, good sometimes, not very good on certain skin types, particularly avoid if you are oily. Links really nicely into the next bit, which is it on its own doesn't nourish your skin, because if you think of it sitting there as a barrier, that's its function. It's not really doing much else. It's not absorbing down into the skin. There's some argument that it actually stops other things absorbing down into the skin. What it will do is stop water escaping out of your skin, but it also stops you absorbing in any moisture from the air, which is really what your skin needs as well, and why you'd be using things like glycerine and hyaluronic acids to actually attract water molecules from the air, and it will negate some of that. So barrier, yep. Nourishing, arguably not. So if you really need moisture in your skin because there isn't there already, then you're going to need something else. Last 2 points for the negatives. Petroleums, it is quite possible they're not metabolizing that well in the human body. There's been some studies done showing hydrocarbon buildup in post-C-section mothers, in baby milk, and that actually the amounts in there have probably been building up quite a lot over time. So there is some evidence that perhaps we're not metabolizing and breaking them down that well, which is not great, bearing in mind how much is in beauty products, but in everything, to be honest. The everything kind of brings me to my next point, and something I get asked quite a lot. Is using petrol derivatives cancer causing? Is it carcinogenic? Now, those of you that know me, I come from quite an academic background, so does Luke, he's a scientist. It's just not something that I think the green organic industry should be saying that it causes cancer. There is not conclusive enough evidence. There is some evidence that it might be questionable though. And so be really balanced about this. What you've also got to realise is petrochemicals are literally everywhere in your life. Like they use hydrocarbons from petrochemicals for everything. Like they'll be inside your fridge, like the fabric of your backpack, your shoes, like so much of what you touch and deal with. And I suppose my point is, because of that, then if you can avoid them in your beauty bottles, why wouldn't you? If you can get rid of them in some places, ideal. As long as there is great alternatives, which there are. You can be using, instead of that oily liquid that comes from petroleum industry, you could be using any amount of seed oils like olive fruit oil, linseed, apricot, all the beautiful things that we would. So is it cancer causing? Questionable. Medical studies saying yes, medical studies saying no. My take, why would you even take the risk if you don't have to and you can do without it? And that is petroleum in skincare. Top lines from this, there's a merry shed load of it everywhere in your beauty bottles. There's some very good reasons why it is there. You can see how people argue why it's still used, and then there are a whole load of reasons why you wouldn't want it used. The choice is yours. I would love you to go and check tonight, have a look, put in the comments, like if you see any ingredients that you think might be petrol based, let me know. If you've got any questions about bottles that you don't know whether it's in there, then just shout. And are there any other ingredients that you are worried about being in those bottles? Give the video a thumbs up, let me know what you want to see next, and please share with your friends and all your other beauty lovers as well. And we will be speaking next about petroleum, particularly about cleansers, like where and how you can avoid them in cleansers.